So I will not be taking part in the chat bit today, and I'll frantically after this call figure out how to get that back to what it should be. So I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, who is Brian Weaver from Clackmannanshire TSI. Brian's colleague couldn't make it, so Brian has been very last minute thrown at the deep end. So we do have to give a special thanks to Brian for this, for jumping in and being able to join the call today. So from all the speakers, we're going to hear, some of them will be talking a bit about digital service delivery and how they made those changes over the last few while. Some of them will be talking about remote working and how you work with teams. But just remember, we'll have the chance for questions after we've heard from 3 speakers. So if you've got questions, please put them in the chat box, but you'll also have the chance to come on video and ask them of your speakers as well. So I'll hand over to you just now, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Yeah, as Ross said, I'm kind of last minute, so I'm just going to talk a bit about what we're doing at CTSI. So we're Clackmannanshire Third Sector Interface based in Alloa, so we deal with Clackmannanshire. So I'm the IT and employability trainer. A bit long-winded, but that's what I am. So just a kind of a brief overview of what we've been doing, where we started and where we are now. So it's about 2 years ago now, I think we got funding from SCBO to set up a digital champions network. So basically I recruit, train, mentor some digital champions who are out and about in the community. So primarily in the local libraries, and they run drop-in sessions. So members of the public can come along. It's a first come, first served basis and get help with their digital problems. And that can vary from anything from, you know, how to switch my tablet on to more complex things, doing job search, CVs, emails, all that kind of thing. So typically they spend about half an hour with an individual, a bit longer if they've got more time. And as I say, the digital champions are based, we try and get them out throughout the whole community, so out in the sort of the rural areas as well as our main town, which is Alloa. As well as sort of training and mentoring, so we obviously, in terms of recruitment, it's a sort of, you know, a wee chat to start off with, find out about their background, a lot of shadowing, so they can shadow me and or you know, current digital champions, and any kind of training that we can offer them. On top of that, we used some of the money back then for me to run basic IT classes, so structured 6-week course, again out in the community, open to any members of the public, and we did some intermediate ones as well. So that's kind of what we're doing. Obviously, due to lockdown, we try and offer some phone support, but obviously none of the digital champions are out in the community at the moment. On top of that, more recently, we've had money from Supporting Communities Fund, and we're doing a tech share scheme. So what we're doing is recycling old tech and distributing them to people who are in need. So this has obviously become apparent due to the crisis, that a lot of people, I kind of knew this anyway, but a lot of people don't have either broadband in their home or a device to access them. So a lot of our people were using the libraries. That was the main facility that they used to do their job search or whatever. And so it became quite apparent that, you know, they're missing out on a lot of things, not being able to access the libraries. So we're taking donations from members of the public. Our IT supplier is refurbishing them. So if it's laptops, he's just ripping out the hard drive and replacing it, factory resetting, whatever's needed. And we've got advertising for people who need that help. So we collect the devices, we refurbish them, then I just kind of look at, we've got a list of people who are needing tech, and supply them with what we can. Some of the money is also, as well as using for the refurbishment, is used to purchase MiFis, because the majority of these people don't have broadband in their home. It's usually a sort of financial issue. So we're supplying them with MiFis, getting them set up, and hopefully away they go. And that's kind of what we do or what I do. I don't know if you want to ask any questions about that, or there's anything else.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, could you tell us a wee bit, Brian, about the digital champions roles? So are they specifically working for the TSI, or are they embedded in other charities, or just good to get a sense of kind of what they're doing?
They're volunteers who are volunteering for us. So they're not they might volunteer for other charities in their, their spare time or whatever. But yeah, it's for manage your third sector interface. So to say we recruit them. We kind of work in partnership, obviously, with the council because they run the libraries, so they give us space there to, to deliver these sessions. But no, they're volunteers for the third sector.
Okay, and so they're training people, local people who have limited digital skills. And
Correct. Yep.
okay, okay, okay. Any success stories from that program? So, I mean,
Well, lots. In terms of the digital champions, we've actually had a high turnover, not because they don't like it, but because the volunteering opportunity gave them, experience and opportunities to apply for other jobs. So I suspect over the 2 and a bit years, we've probably had about 15, 16 digital champions. We're now back down to about 5 or 6. The rest have all moved on to positive destinations, whether it be further education or employment, which is really good. It's
yeah,
not so handy for us because we have to train them again, but yeah, that's good. And a lot of individuals who previously didn't have any IT skills and are going on to once they get the bug, as it were, they see what other things can interest them
yeah.
online, and again, a lot of people who need to use it for job seeking. So you have people on universal credit, people haven't applied for jobs. So we've had a few success stories there as well.
Brilliant, that's excellent. So there's been some questions coming to chat, but we'll hold those till we've heard from the two other speakers. Just to say in the meantime as well, I would do it with my keyboard still not working, but John or Jen, if they get a chance, will pop a link to, there's a Digital Champions community, which I know Aaron and Ailey, who's on the call from SCVO, are involved in. That's quite a thriving community of people managing various Digital Champions programs across the country. So that's something that some of you might want to take part in. The other thing to look at is Connecting Scotland, which some of you might be aware of. So if you go to connecting.scot, which is the website address, and that's the Scottish Government programme which got announced a few weeks ago around getting devices to individuals at the moment who don't have a device, connectivity or basic digital skills. And there's going to be digital champions as part of that network as well. So if your organisation is an intermediary organisation like a TSI, or perhaps you work with a specific community of users in an area, you can bid into that programme through your local authority to get access to those devices. And at the moment, it's a mix of Chromebooks and iPads that are available for individuals. So Chromebooks quite popular amongst school-age children and families, and then iPads for other individuals. So do go and have a look at that. Jen's just put the link in the channel as well. Okay, so we're going to hear now from Zelda Bradley from Orkney Rape and Sexual Assault Service. So we had a violence against women and girls call, so a thematic call like one of these, probably I think it was a few months ago now, John. It was a really well attended call and really interesting space where people were sharing some of the best practice, and actually some of the violence against women and girls services have made some of the biggest shifts in terms of how they deliver services, and been doing some really incredible work. So I'll hand you over to Zelda just now and she'll talk a wee bit more about what they've been doing.
Thanks very much, Ross. A wee bit of history, I suppose, is that I've worked in the statutory sector up until about 13 years ago, and then I moved over to the voluntary sector, and I'm currently the manager for ORSAS, as we call it, Orkney Rape and Sexual Assault Service, but I also volunteer for Cruise Bereavement, and I'm in the local Rotary as well. We started our project 4 years ago as a pilot, and we're now a charity in our own right. We went from 1 part-time development worker to 3 staff members and 5 trustees, and our own equality hub on the High Street in Kirkwall, and a very visible presence in the community, and that's an accessible front, if you like, for all the very discreet work we do. supporting survivors of sexual violence, and that's quite a departure for a rape crisis service to be so visible in the community, but it's worked for us. And I think what I wanted to say about rural and remote areas is we're not all the same. If you work in Orkney, it's not the same as working in Shetland or the Western Isles or Dumfries and Galloway. And we've all got our individual economic histories, our own cultural histories. And that what I really wanted to impress upon folk and speak to, and I'm probably speaking to the converted here, but that governance around and your local knowledge about how your community operates and what the community dynamics are the things that are going to help you choose what's going to work best for you in your community as far as digital applications and the kind of partnerships that you want to create. And what I'm saying is that I suppose that the digital aspect is the tools that you can use to develop what you're already doing in your service delivery. I think some of the things we've generally got an understanding about is the difficulties around transport, about communication, rubbish broadband connection, and some of the community dynamics. So there's some similarities there. One of the things that I found is the issue around just having small teams, and the sustainability of that is really difficult to manage. But through using Microsoft Teams or using other sort of platforms like Slack, we're completely integrated with our different networks. We can talk to specialists, we can talk to more experienced practitioners, we can, on the move, if you like, we can have team meetings, and that's really important. And we found that when we had to move out of our office, because of COVID, we were actually ready to do that because we already had laptops, we already had mobiles. We could move home quite quickly within a matter of hours, whereas some of our other partners and statutory partners, it took them nearly a month to be in a situation where they were actually ready to deliver services. So we were able to sustain that contact with the people that use our service through our social media. And I think one of the things that's really valuable is to find out what people use in your area and what apps they use, how much do they use the local newspaper. Nobody under 40 in Orkney buys the Arcadian, except for the Sheriff Court page occasionally. So it's like really knowing your local community and who's on what. So we use Twitter primarily to speak to some younger age groups, but mostly for funders and national organisations. We use Facebook to speak to over 40s, and we use Instagram to speak to younger people. And that's just the dynamic in our community, but everybody will be slightly different. And I think it's also to be aware that those things change. A new app comes in, and all your school population are suddenly using that. So it's quite important to do that. One of the things that I get frustrated about with to do with operating a charity in rural and remote areas is that our funding is usually linked to population size, and therefore it's very difficult to grow your team or to make it more sustainable and resilient. And what I think is really good is if these kinds of discussions that we have about working rural and remotely can be shared. We kind of know what that feels like and what the challenges are, but I think it really needs to be shared with our funders. It really needs to be shared with the Scottish Government, because there is still a lot of assumptions being made about how we operate or how our communities operate in rural and remote areas. The other thing I really wanted to just discuss briefly too was about community dynamics, because you're the best placed in your community to understand. Now we work in a service that is based on confidentiality, is based on trust that our service will be able to keep things confidential. I can't go to one of our islands and visit somebody and provide support face to face to them without the whole community knowing there's that woman from rape crisis going out to see Jane. So we have to look at alternative ways of meeting people. And what a lot of people in our island communities do is that they access support by video conference, by phone, by email. And because a lot of our services, our hospital appointments, our dentist appointments aren't available on the small islands to people, they travel in. And so on a shopping trip or on a dental appointment, they will also come and see us as well. So it's really understanding what is accessible and how people operate things and what they're comfortable with. I think one thing that I'm really interested in at the moment is about fundraising after COVID, because I think in rural and remote communities we really rely on public social events to raise funds, either people that hold them on our behalf or things that we set up ourselves to raise funds, and we're relying on business in providing us cheap venues for that or contributing to the fundraising aspect of that. And I think after COVID we're going to see a very different economic climate, as far as we know that we're expecting for Orkney there to be job losses in the region. Potentially the worst scenario is job losses of about 4,000 in Orkney, which is huge out of a population of 22,000. So one of the things that we're looking at is an app called Sustainably, which allows people to do micro donations. So every time they buy something with their phone, it also it attracts a younger demographic of under 35s to the voluntary sector as well. But it means that every time they buy something through their phone, that just tops it up to the nearest pound. And so you get micro donations. It's very controllable, but from the person that's making the donation. So they can put a limit on the donations that they make in a month, or they can choose to use it £10 or £20 a month to your charity. And you don't have to look for gift aid, can be done automatically through that. So it's worth having a look at Sustainably. It's something that our board have just said that we're going to go ahead with. And I think that they've waived some of the setup fee on that at the moment. So it's just some ideas there about how folk can be innovative. Thanks very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Zelda. So John and Jen have been putting some of these links that I mentioned into the chat. John's also put in the service recipes from the Catalyst. So they are kind of gathering up kind of case studies. So some of them come from these calls, some of them come from case studies that SCVO have gathered and some of their sources, and creating what they're going to term recipes for those, which has allowed other charities to look at how one charity is using a digital tool and basically kind of lift that methodology and apply it to the work that they're doing. So we had Peter Jacobs from Bernardo's on one of the calls talking about how they use WhatsApp for their services for vulnerable children at the moment. And they basically broken down how that works in Bernardo's and some of the safeguarding that sits around it. The other one, Jen, that's maybe worth putting in is the Catalyst safeguarding tool that got launched this week, if we get a chance. So it's a really nice tool if you're working with groups. If you're working with any group online, you should be thinking about safeguarding, but particularly where you may be working with vulnerable adults or you're working with children. There's a really nice tool that they've created, which has got, I think, 7 points in it that you should think about for safeguarding services. And that's good because a lot of the safeguarding stuff can be quite hefty documents and it's not often broken down very easily. And they made that really digestible. Any other tools, John, that you put in that I maybe missed in chat, or anything you can think of based around Zelda's chat there? I think John's in another world of answering emails. I don't know. He's not.
I was just looking for a link on that safeguarding guide, just so we mention it. But I suppose an interesting point I was just thinking of with Zelda's point was, on the one hand, for service provision needing to be discreet and confidential, so not necessarily branding everything you do, but on the other hand, having that profile within your community to help with fundraising and support, and that must be a difficult combination to get right, because you need to be both known but also anonymous as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
We were forced into a situation where we need to look for new premises, and we had really discreet premises up a lane, but near parking, strangely enough. And we had to move from that, and we were forced into a situation where the only thing available that we could afford was a shop front space. And we thought, do we just film up the windows and pretend we're not here? Or do we promote something wider, and within our remit we campaign for survivors' voices and for improvement to services? So we were able to broaden that out within our charitable aims and remits to include it into an equality hub. So as well as talking about our stuff, we were able to talk about a whole range of things that promoted transparency and support in the community, and we have a different access to the building for people that are wanting to be completely discreet and confidential about what they're actually accessing and why they're there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Zelda. Okay, we're gonna hear from our next speaker in a wee second. What I thought would be good to do, don't know why I decided to do this like halfway through a call. It's probably more sensible to do it at the start, but I've just decided to do it. I thought it'd be good if we could get everyone to type in where they work. So if you could tell us which charity you work with, or community group, or social enterprise, or if you work with a housing association, or if you snuck in from the public sector, that is okay, don't be ashamed. If you want to type it in the box and hit return, just so we can see where everyone's from. Laura Johnson, I have no idea what the Brilliant Club is, but that's an amazing name. Cool, okay. Real mix of organisations, big geographical spread as well. North Yorkshire, Iona, Dumfries and Galloway, Stirling. Brilliant. Emma, have you been reading your book that you won? Where is Emma? Is Emma gone? No, Emma's there. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
yes. It's good. I will. Very excitingly, I won a book. That book.
Yeah.
Yes. It's good. It's really good. I can highly recommend.
Cool.
Full of little golden nuggets, which are just brilliant.
We can talk about that afterwards. Actually, that's good. We can maybe do that in the Q&A session. There's maybe some good stuff that you found in that book you can share. Okay, so hopefully that's given everyone a sense of where everyone's working from. We've got a really huge geographical spread today, from Lincolnshire right up to some of the more remote islands in Scotland. That's amazing. Okay, right, we're going to hear from Tanya Cook now from A1 Community Works. Tanya, I'll hand over to you. You're in an office, which is like an odd background to see these days. It's amazing. It's good. I might need to unmute you, Tanya, if you can't do it at your end. Let me try. There we go. That should be you.
Yeah.
There you go. Right.
Yes, we've been in our office throughout the time because it's surrounded by fields. There's nobody else here. But we have the chicken pathologists next door, but we never see them before lockdown. So, we've managed to remain remote. And the only other employee is my sister.
Oh.
So we were in contact anyway. So
Okay.
we've not cross-contaminated anyone else.
I don't know if anyone else is struggling to hear Tanya's audio, or other people
Right.
have trouble. I don't know if it's maybe just the microphone near, or maybe even just try unplugging it.
Is that better?
That is better, yeah.
Yeah.
Much better. Cool. Thank you, Tanya.
We bought some very expensive think screens from Lenovo and don't. Is my answer. The audio has been intermittently temperamental.
That's not good. We can hear you fine now, though. So.
We're a UK online centre, so we work with the Good Things Foundation. Our audience is nearly completely rural. York is in North Yorkshire, but it's like a separate entity, and there isn't another city. So we train digital champions, and we outreach in the community. I've just said our offices are surrounded by fields. So if you don't drive, you can't get to us, so we come to you. So this has been an interesting experience because we've been coming to you on Zoom or phone. But the biggest concern I have at the moment is if you're not online in any way, we're not finding you. So, you know, there is a group out there who are not connected. They don't have a device. We recognise that. We've put some devices into the community through an English scheme, but nowhere near enough. So we're expecting quite a big uptake of our service once we can get back out into community. Because I think what the virus has done, it's created limited users. So people who've learned to do one thing because they have to, but they don't have a complete range of the digital skills they need. We've now all got into the habit of being isolated. So I think everybody here will probably agree that digital has never been more important. And the use of it has accelerated faster than any of us anticipated. And I totally agree with something Brian said. We train digital champions. I've got one at the minute because everybody else has found a job. No sooner do I get them to a good skills level than somebody else wants them. So we don't, however, adopt Brian's method of having courses in the community. We use open source online learning to teach people what they want at the rate they want to learn. So primarily Learn My Way, make it click, but we find the idea very useful. We use Future Learn and a whole range of resources so that we're tackling the problem the person has. And the difference between us and just doing the course online by yourself is the dropout rate for unsupported learning is huge. So we're there when you can't work out how it works, but we see our role as empowering people to learn for themselves rather than teaching them. And we've traditionally outreached in pubs and cafes and places like that, where we could have classes of 10, 20, with each individual on a piece of equipment, either their own or ours. We take kit out with us, learning something completely different from the person they're near to. And basically it works quite well, but you need two people because you need somebody prepared to sit down with a learner, or at the minute sit socially distant from a learner, and then somebody watching the rest of the group looking for signs of who's struggling. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody. We've also made much more use of social media now. I think, Zelda, you were right, roughly. There are differences in every area, but we tend to find that slightly older people are using Facebook, younger people are using Instagram, and I'm very aware that Instagram is growing in popularity. And I read quite a lot of tech, guys. I'm a bit of a nerd. But they do say that now Instagram started taking news items, it's going to outstrip Twitter. But I agree, the reason I use Twitter is I follow digital influencers, organisations. Anne from Lincolnshire, who's on the video, was in a training session this morning, and apparently Lloyds Bank said that people in rural areas don't really need a lot of support because they're digitally savvy. Well, I have to disagree with them because that's not what we found. They're as diverse as the population anywhere else, but perhaps a higher proportion aren't that well connected because they started late, because they didn't have any connectivity to connect to. You don't learn something you can't use. Yeah. And I noticed a number of people haven't put their video on. If this was North Yorkshire, I would be assuming it's because they've got iffy broadband. Yeah, that's probably a big part of it. Yeah, I think Ailey's got children running about. There might be that. Maybe there's often I have someone like trying to climb on me as well. So whatever I can avoid video. Thank you very much, Tanya. That was really useful. So there were some questions came in, I think, John, via the chat. Were there any that I missed as the speakers were talking?
One that came in quite early on when Brian was talking was about whether devices they're sending out have software preloaded, or is it something that people customize themselves?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of the form that the person or the referrer would fill out would ask them what device they would like, and is there any particular apps or programs they would want on the device. So where possible, if we can put them on, yeah, we'll put them on.
Okay. Brilliant.
We would standardly load Learn My Way just because it's a very friendly website for people who are starting from scratch. And then you don't need to remember things, you can just log back in. And
Yeah.
normally what we do is we create a username and password so that they can log straight in, but deliver with something, an explanation that they can set their own password and how to change it.
Brilliant. Okay. Any questions from the room? Anyone want to jump on and ask questions? We've got Brian, Tanya, and Zelda, and it could be about digital inclusion, or it could be about service delivery, or maybe around how the remote teams work in their organisation. Any questions from the room? Okay, right. So everyone wants to get in the sunshine. What I'm going to ask you. Sorry, you go, John.
Emma asked a question earlier about how people access the refurb laptops. I don't know if that had been covered already.
Interesting. Brian, I don't know if you...
Yeah, well, as I say, what happens is the refurb laptops end up in our office. Our IT man takes them away. I kind of liaise with him about what's going on in them, and then it's a case of I have the list of people who are looking for the tech, and it's usually me or one of the staff members that go out and deliver it to them. Obviously, at this moment, at a safe distance, and try and explain as much as possible that they need to know, hand it over, and off they go. Again, I'm kind of at the end of the telephone if they need a bit of help. So I've spent a bit of time either via Zoom or on the phone explaining bits and pieces. But once we get back to normality, it's like, they can pop in and see our digital champions.
That's great. Yeah, and it's worth saying as well, the digital champions Slack community that I mentioned as well, there's some local initiatives in there. So and Ailey's just put a link actually to the digital inclusion page in the SCVO website. So as well as Connecting Scotland, which is more of a Scotland-wide programme, but obviously has a finite number of devices that will go out, there's a lot of very, very localised bits of work going on. So like Paisley YMCA have been distributing stuff to young people in their community. There's like Edinburgh Remakery in Edinburgh that have been doing loads of refurbished devices. So if you're not tied into those in your community, that SCVO community is a really good place to just ask. To say, we're based in Ayrshire, who's doing this type of work in Ayrshire, who should we get in touch with? And there'll be someone in there, because I think there's maybe about 600 people in that community now who will know who to go and speak to. So that'd be my bit of advice, because although the UK government, the Scottish government programme going out with the local authorities will have a fair number of devices, it's not going to cover the number of people that need it in the communities that you're working in. So it's probably going to be a mix of new devices where you can get them, and then working with some of those people who are going through those kind of refurbished programs. Okay, what I'm going to get you all to do just very quickly, because we've got a wee bit of time left, is we're going to do, I've shamelessly stolen this from another call, but agile and fragile. So we're going to start off with fragile. So we're going to have a chat about what is the one thing at the moment that you're struggling with in your organisation. And it could be about the technology you're using to deliver services to beneficiaries. It could be about how you communicate or collaborate internally. It could be about how you plan for something that has been a complete shift to the way you work during COVID-19, but actually an uncertainty of what that's going to look like beyond this period. So anything where you feel, here's the biggest thing we're struggling with right now, I want you to type it out, but don't press return until I give the signal. So take a minute to think about that, type it out, do not press enter, and we'll give you the signal, and then we'll hopefully get a flurry of things that we can help you with or we can discuss as they come through. So what's the one big thing your organisation is struggling with? It can be outward or inward facing, entirely up to you. It can also be very small. It could literally be your telephone system is office based and you've no way of accessing that from the cloud, and you're struggling with that. Okay, right, everyone press return. Okay, so things like working from home has come up here. Yeah, see if I can help with that. Tanya, can I get you to mute yourself just now? Is that okay? I'll mute you for you. You've got noisy co-workers in the background, Tanya. That's finances to run the programme, received initial money to set up digital champions, managers looking for constant funding, keeping volunteers engaged, Ellie's saying. That'd be an interesting one actually. Is anyone in the room, can I get a show of hands for anyone who's done anything interesting in using digital to keep your volunteers engaged during this period? Anyone got examples of that? Yeah, Leslie, do you want to jump in, share your... Oh, I'll need to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. There we go.
Yeah, obviously I think you'll all be aware recent Volunteers Week start of June, so we did an afternoon tea party. We actually managed to get little cakes delivered and wee samples of different tea, and we all came together on Zoom and had a wee blather, we catch up and did a quiz, so it was really successful. I'm doing weekly or twice weekly kind of drop-ins with the volunteers just to check in how they're all doing. It's optional if they want to come, but the quiz and the tea party was a more kind of planned and organised one. We've done a couple of mindfulness sessions as well. One of our counsellors is quite experienced with mindfulness, so she'll guide us through things like that. Done one around kind of cartoon drawing, so it's just utilising the skills of the different volunteers, the different interests they have. If they've got anything they want to share, we'll try and plan a wee session, but it's been working quite well.
It's amazing.
For those that have the skills, there's an element, and that was one of my kind of questions. It's keeping up to date with all the different platforms, because obviously there are a couple of volunteers that are not computer literate at all. So it's for me, it's about how do I keep them involved with the rest of the team. Well, they're quite separate with not managing to access the Zoom sessions and things.
Brilliant. Yeah, we've put so check on my Twitter account from today. The kind of latest tweet that I've done is kind of a thread which has gathered up some best practice. So John shared some stuff and some other people in there. So if you're thinking about how do we bring some of these Zoom calls to life or team calls, whatever platform you use, there's some really good, I think there's about 20 different examples in there, from icebreakers to more kind of interactive sessions that you can do with people. John, any points in there that stand out for you? Any in terms of the fragile?
I think, one challenge I saw there, I think it was from Zelda, was about how multi-agency partners are using all kinds of different systems, and that I'm sure can be an extra obstacle, particularly if they're in a situation where it's taking them a while to set it up as well, because you need to be able to keep contact with the people you're supporting and give them a good service, and if there's lots of bureaucracy in the way, that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
one quick thing I was going to say on both volunteers and fundraising actually is I think a few charities have found they've been able to get quite good in-kind support from businesses where businesses haven't been able to do their usual trading. They're maybe looking for ways to support their community, but of course the challenge is with social distancing and so on, it might be quite limited what people can physically do, but it might be an opportunity for businesses to help out in ways that they wouldn't think to do otherwise, because they're usually more focused on their day-to-day.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're gonna move on now to something a bit more positive. So the digitally agile. So what's the thing in your organisation that has particularly worked well over this period? So it could be that you've managed to get devices to beneficiaries who weren't digitally connected before. It could be that your staff team has moved from relying on office-based communications and meetings to a tool like Slack. It could be something completely left field. So whatever you want to share, what is agile? What has been working really well in your organisation? As before, type it out. We'll give you the signal and then press return, and then we'll see what interesting stuff you've all been up to. But again, it can be something quite big, or it can be something really, really small, a small change that you've made. Okay, right, let's go, press return. Oh wow, it's an interesting one. Joanne, getting a 4G hub on every island family to complement poor broadband, that's amazing. Rosie talking about, yeah, members complete 10-minute videos in gardening. It's actually interesting, we've got so the digital leadership programme that I run with Maddie from SCVO. We've got a cycling charity on it, and they do a lot of workshops for people, so helping people think about how they can maintain their own bikes without maintaining the bike shops all the time. Initially, when lockdown happened, there was a massive panic in that organisation because the kind of bread and butter of what they do had suddenly shifted. And they've moved to doing mechanic videos, so you can either watch their suite of mechanics videos on YouTube, or you can book in consultations with your mobile phone, just showing the mechanic the bits in your bike, and they'll talk you through how to make repairs at home. It's been hugely successful for the organisation. So just some of these simple shifts that people have made. John, any that stand out for you in there?
I think one thing that caught my eye was somebody saying that as a remote team member, they actually feel more connected to their team now that everybody's on digital, which is an interesting one, because I think I've heard before of a few, particularly workers that work out in the field, if you spend a lot of time out seeing service users, you're maybe not actually in touch with your team quite as much as you would have been before.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I've noticed internal comms has come up quite a bit. It's quite an interesting thing where, you know, email and things like Teams and Slack are all digital channels, but actually we've seen quite a big shift. A lot of organisations anecdotally telling me that they hardly have had many emails over this period because a lot of communication has shifted to tools like Slack and Teams because they can't have staff meetings. And actually it's really interesting that I don't see a lot of organisations going back to that. And what we're seeing actually now is a lot of organisations where email is basically the place where you communicate with external partners, and it's not the place where you communicate with your internal teams. Do other people, Tanya was nodding, and a few other people, do people feel that they're in that space now where there's been less email comms and more comms on kind of collaborative platforms like Teams and Slack? Okay, Emma's kind of like, Emma, do you want to tell us what your kind of middle of the road is?
I worked, so I'm the only person in Scotland for our charity.
Okay.
Everyone else is down south, and we've got one person in Wales. So Wales and I are both home based, and everybody else is office based down south across 3 offices. So I've loved them. We've created tea breaks and all that sort of thing together, which has been great. But I have a fear that now people are beginning to go back to offices down south. They're going to resort back to old habits. We're trying desperately to hang on to the coattails of people not doing that. So it's been really interesting. And what has been interesting is, sorry, I don't really can hear my dog barking, is our services helpline team, who would have worked in an office, a call centre office, now work remotely, and we're using Teams. So when we're on calls and things, and we're having a difficult call, we can get support through Teams from each other because we're able just to type in having a challenge, and we're debriefing through that, and that's been really helpful. People have actually really benefited from that. So that's been good.
It's brilliant. Amazing. Yeah, that's really useful. I don't know, John, could you, I mean, it seems really obvious, but I think people in the room might benefit from the kind of guidance that you guys had at SCVO prior to COVID and that kind of one pager. And I don't know if it's worthwhile just giving people a general overview of some of the kind of key elements in that. So this notion that rather than internal comms being kind of left up to a bit of a free-for-all, which I think during COVID that's happened, things have flexed and changed a lot, is the SCVO digital team have a very clear, this is what email's for, this is what meetings are for, this is what Slack is for. I don't know if you want to give people a quick overview of that.
Yeah, I think it came about because a while back we started using Slack for the first time. So it was this new tool that nobody really quite knew what to do with. So the main principles we have in mind are, first of all, update your status. So make it clear when you're online or offline. If you're using something like Teams, that's often automatically updated based in your diary, but that's a really good cue for colleagues if they understand your part-time working pattern. The other is having a distinction between like general chat, which could be just FYI stuff or random interesting things, and then things that people need to act on. So we have a kind of team info channel where the info goes, and then a team action channel where the stuff people need to respond to goes. And I guess the third thing is if somebody gets directly at mention, so if I type at Ross, I expect Ross to do some stuff within a reasonable time frame. But also understanding that if I can see that Ross is away for a bit or that he's in meetings right through the rest of the day, I'd understand that and kind of work out another way. So it's trying to use the awareness we have on people's availability to cut down on chasing up and sending messages on a kind of blanket basis to people that maybe don't need to see it. So I think that's been helpful. And I think we also use the thread function quite a lot, and it's the same in Teams, where if there's an initial post, you can put all the replies underneath that, and that makes it much quicker for people to catch up with if they've been away. I think that's probably all the points I'd cover at this point.
Really excellent. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. And don't try and create how-to guides. So Slack itself has amazing help functionality, and you see that a lot with organizations as they try and write these kind of manuals for a system that's constantly updated, and by the time you've written that manual, half the stuff in it is not going to be relevant. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about key principles of how you communicate internally, and an agreement in that organization in terms of when you send an email to a coworker, here's why you might choose an email over a Slack message or a Teams message, and just giving that a wee bit of thought. Emma, I'm going to put you on the spot because you've got a free book. So like I bought a book and sent you it. So like this is like the Pfeiffer in me is like you're getting nothing for free. Do you want to tell us, you were like told us about all the kind of good nuggets in it? So we've spoken about service design in a lot of these calls, and just that principle of not getting too bogged down in the digital world and the digital side of things, but just taking things back to your users, whether it's your internal staff teams or whether it's your beneficiaries. Is there anything that particularly stood out? So just so you all know, this is from Lou Down, the book Good Services. So we had Lou on one of the calls before. So if you go on the SCVO YouTube channel, you'll get the full video from the author. There's also a podcast with her that we've done as well, but it's a really good, I guess, set of principles to think about how do we design services that are better fit for our beneficiaries' needs in 2020. Anything that stands out for you?
So there was two things. I can't remember the first one. My second one, well, firstly, if you haven't watched the podcast or watched the video, go back and watch it because it's really easy to watch and hear. And I think what I really liked from the video was it was quite obvious that Lou's technology didn't work, so she did it over her phone sort of thing, kept showing bits on the phone, and it sort of made me feel like, oh, she's okay, this is normal. So that was quite nice. It reassured me that it doesn't always work. And the bits that I really like about lack of diversity in your team equals lack of inclusion in your service, and just being aware of that. And it's just full of really useful little bits throughout it. And I'm sort of beginning to, I'm dipping in and out, I'm not doing it. But this was one, nouns are for experts, verbs are for everyone. And I thought that's a really good way to think about it in terms of how you, when you're trying to describe what your service does, you need to describe it in verbs rather than all great big fancy nouns, because then it's more accessible to everybody. So it's just little bits like that are just really helpful, I think. So yeah,
absolutely, and you know, sometimes some of the stuff that's in there, and particularly actually if you look at, we had a previous call on content design as well, and again there's the videos on the SCVO YouTube channel and also the podcast available, but just really simple principles. So that one about making sure when you describe a service it's a doing word. Now that seems really, really obvious, but what we're talking about is someone comes to you because they have a specific scenario and a specific problem, and your service is going to help them with it. What they don't care is the name you gave your service when you applied to the Esme Fairbairn Foundation for funding 2 years ago, and that's the thing that they see on your website or in a leaflet or in a poster. What they care about is the question that they have and how you're going to help them. And so thinking about that from a user's perspective can be really powerful. Sorry, you're going to say something, Emma?
Well, what I was going to say, I think as third sector, we're quite good at doing that. We're not brilliant, but we're good and we're getting better.
Absolutely.
And our colleagues in statutory, so particularly local authorities, get so hung up in everybody knowing what section they're from and what division they're from, and actually we don't care. We just want somebody to provide a service for us. And I think we're much more agile in being able to provide that service, and this book is really good at helping us do that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The one that I particularly like, because it's just a really easy one to get your head around when we're thinking about digital, and it can be overly complicated, this notion of, I should get money for this. Like, I don't get any money for Lose Books, but I should get money for this. Google is the homepage of your service. So that's just a really simple change in the thinking of your organization, where you maybe got a senior team or maybe a board who are insistent that there's this kind of homepage land grab and every service is mentioned on it, because there's this weird vision of how people use the internet, that they type in your URL, come straight to your website, land on a homepage, and then go, I know exactly the service I need and I will navigate in a really clear linear way. Is actually, they have no idea. They don't even know you exist fundamentally. Most of them won't. And actually, how do they find you through that search in Google? Because they've asked a question. Where does that person land on your site, and can they do the thing that you want them to do on that page? This is the bit where most charity websites fall short. So I land on Zelda's website because I've made a search around a certain type of support and I live in that community, so it does really well in search. And then I get onto that landing page and I want to self-refer myself, or I want someone to phone me back with more information. And all I'm presented with is a page of information, but there's nowhere to go next. And I have to take the gumption to click that contact page, and then end up on a contact page with a blank contact form. I then have to fill that out, and I've no idea who it's going to go to. And particularly in some of the services that Zelda offers, you don't want to send information about some of the stuff that you're going to get in touch with to an admin email address. So it's really thinking about what are those touch points, but how do you make it as easy as possible for someone to connect and use that service? And often it's not really technical at all. It's just putting yourselves in the shoes of that end user. So yeah, if you don't want to buy the book, don't buy the book, because I don't get any money for these books. But you can watch Lou's video, and you can listen to the podcast as well. John, I don't know if we've got a couple more minutes. I don't know if there's any thoughts you've got in terms of that kind of more of the service design perspective, and particularly I think it's more applicable a lot of the time to actually rural based organisations where you've got that dispersion of people.
One quick thing I was thinking about was about the whole privacy question, because at one level, if you're using remote and digital services, you can enhance privacy because people don't have to go to a particular place. But if somebody's needing support around an issue they're experiencing in their own home, like domestic violence or that kind of thing, then that's quite challenging, because you as the service provider don't know what's the immediate environment somebody's in. Is it safe to continue a conversation? What kind of messages can you send that are not going to expose that person to any more harm? So that's challenging, I think. But I guess the other thing is what this whole shift has done is made charities just have to rethink that all. And in many ways, a lot of charities maybe would have developed a model of service provision that well at one point, but they don't keep it up to date. And I really like the point that both Zelda and Tanya were making about you can't really make assumptions about what works in the community. You have to go and test it in real time and have up-to-date knowledge, because the kind of media that people use changes, or the way that people find out information has been changing very quickly, and that's been the case for years. But maybe now is a moment where that's become more obvious to us, so it's a good moment to kind of think through the way that we reach people and the way that people connect with the services we provide. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're now at 3 o'clock, so we're just about to finish up. Just to say thanks to our speakers, so to Brian, Zelda, and Tanya. We've got 2 DigiShift calls next week, so one on Tuesday and one on Thursday. You get the links to those, and you can book those via the SCVO events page. If you just Google SCVO events, you'll get access to all of those. Any other stuff coming up from an SCVO perspective, John, that you want to kind of flag up before we finish?